Well, everybody, welcome back to the channel, and it's been quite a while. I've had August off, so it's nice to be back in the recording chair. And today sees me coming home from the Warlord Games Open Day. They have this every year, but it's the first time that I've actually been to one. Now, I should apologise from the off. I didn't actually think to take many pictures while I was there. I was sort of wandering around enjoying the experience, and I should have been taking pictures for this video, but I wasn't really sure whether I was going to do one or not. Now, obviously, they had on display a lot of things that were upcoming, not just for Black Powder, we'll get to that in a second, but they had a lot of stuff for their bolt action. They had a lot of stuff for their new epic pike and shot, but the majority of things they had on display for the upcoming releases anyway were bolt action. Now, I mentioned briefly Black Powder there, and the big news there coming is that they are releasing American Civil War. Now, I have to say, their American Civil War figures did look very nice. I also have to say, and I've questioned this many times, and I probably should have done it at the Q&A, why? The Perrys have got American Civil War covered very well, but, John Stollard did say, so John Stollard is the chap who owns Warlord Games. He used to be the sales director at Games Workshop, and he said that one of his favourite periods he's always wanted to do was the American Indian Wars. So the 1880s, 1870s, I don't know, sort of the Battle of Little Bighorn and the cowboys and the Indians, that kind of thing. So he did say that's what he wanted to do, and I guess the American Civil War sort of predates that and leads into it. But he did say that he wasn't sure whether to do them as historically accurate or sort of John Wayne accurate, which, again, I don't necessarily mind. I think that could be quite cool in the way that bolt action is very much the Commando Comics version of World War II, not your granddad's actual lived experience of World War II. And as long as that's on the tin, I think that's absolutely fine. So the day consisted of, so you went in through the main gates, and there were some display games to your left and right. Friends of General Haig had a Culloden game on, and there was a Black Sails game next to it, which was run by, and I forget his name, so apologies, the chap who does the rigging tutorial for the ships. So whenever he was talking, I felt like I should, just a pressure headache coming on, because I felt I should be rigging some ships at the time. So that was a bit of a trip. Over on the other side of the car park, they had some absolutely gorgeous bolt action display tables. They had one that was an attack on, it looked like a German mortar pit or something like that. And then the other one had a little village and some barrage section as well. So that was really nice. It looked like you could actually put the two tables together to form one large table. But so that was the gaming side of it. There wasn't really room for free gaming, which I think might have been a good idea, actually. They had that at Golden Demon this year. They had just tables that you and a mate could plonk your armies down on and start playing some games. So that might have been, maybe for next year, maybe for future. That might be something that's worth looking at. But you went in, you had the shop, and you had the factory that was open. Now, the factory, they were doing a sort of a free build-your-own US paratrooper squad. They gave you the sprues and the glue and the clippers and everything, and you could build your own para squad and take it home with you. I didn't bother with that because I've actually got the US Airborne starter set in the cellar. So I've got plenty of those. I certainly don't need any more. I did, however, get a free sprue of US Marines, which was very nice. Because as some of you may know, I'm working on a Pacific War project at the moment, so some Marines would be a nice change of pace from doing my nice and easy Japanesey. Upstairs in the factory, they had a small ante-room, and they had a couple of games of Epic in there. No Napoleonics, unfortunately. They had one of Gettysburg and a pikey and shotty one. And then you could go to see the upcoming releases, which were largely the Covenanters for Epic Pike and Shot, the American Civil War stuff. If you've not seen the American Civil War stuff, as I say, I didn't take any pictures because I'm an idiot. There's no real reason for me not to. So check out Leon T66. Yeah, Leon T66. Check out his channel. He's got some really nice photographs of the American Civil War stuff, and he's also got some pictures of the World War II Italians with bicorns on. They're a bit weird. They look a bit like Mexicans. I want to say they're Carabinieri, but my knowledge of Italians generally is not great. But certainly my knowledge of World War II Italians is even worse. So, yeah, sorry, yeah, I got myself in trouble there. So, yes, there's some nice figures on there. Check out Leon TT's video. They're really good. Also, Mordian Glory, he was there as well. He's got a great channel. He does a lot of bolt action stuff. There's increasingly bolt action stuff. He seems to be going off 40k. I can't really blame him. And, yeah, check him out. Throw him some love as well. I've actually contacted him to do a collab, but he hasn't got back to me. But in spite of that, go and check him out anyway. He's very good. His channel, Mordian Glory. So I saw a lot of YouTubers there, and that takes me into the seminars. Now, I only stayed for 2 seminars because I've got a very old friend who lives in Nottingham, so I went to see her for some late lunch. But the 2 seminars were quite interesting. The first one was the main one, so that was the main reveal. And that was where a chap from Wargames Illustrated, he asked questions to John Stallard and the head of the Warlord Games studio, who is Paul Sawyer. Again, you may remember him as Fat Bloke in White Dwarf. He used to be the editor. He was one of the original Tale of 4 gamers. In fact, I remember, and I've still used inspiration for this. There's an upcoming start collecting video that I've slightly modified for modern sensibilities. But I remember he did the Tale of 4 gamers. He had £1.50 left over at the end of the month, so he bought himself a bacon sandwich. So, that not only dates the video to when you could buy a bacon sandwich for £1.50, but you'll see some Freddo-based comedy. Well, I think it's funny in the next Getting Started video in a few weeks. But anyway, so the question and answer session was with the 2 of those guys, and they went through what was coming up. So, I mean, Epic Hail Caesar seems to be a bit of a no-brainer. They were talking about Romans and ancient Britons. It would make far more sense to me for them to do the successors, because you can have both sides in one box. I did sort of murmur that, but I don't think anyone heard me. Or possibly even Greeks, earlier Greeks, Spartans and Athenians, all that kind of stuff. Pre-Alexandrian Greeks. Classical Greeks, that's the word I'm thinking of. Classical Greeks. So I guess you could do Romans as well. You could do the Roman Civil War. So that was very much talked about. One thing that they did mention to do with bolt action, someone asked the question, is version 3 coming out? And they said, well, we've been working, now you start working on the next edition the day after the edition comes out. So he said that, but he was pretty clear that there's going to be no new bolt action edition coming down the road soon. They've just released their Italian book, so I think they've got another Italian book to release. So no problems getting into bolt action version 2. And then the big one, the one that you're all here for, I've buried the lead enough. We talked about black powder. Now, having thoroughly buried the lead, I'm going to get straight into it here and say, it's not looking good, boys. The future of Napoleonic black powder is not bleak, but it's not looking rosy either. They did not mention at all the 1813 book until very late on, when they called it, what was it called? Something Under Eagles. And they also mentioned, I mean, obviously not something under it. I can't remember what the first word was. And they also mentioned the next 2 books they'll be doing, which are on the Boer War and the Crimean War, which I think, both interesting things. I'll come back to the Crimean War one. They already do an American Civil War book, so it makes sense for them to do figures that follow them. And I'll come back to something that John Stallard said a bit later on. But the Crimean War, they already do a very small range of Crimean War. I'd like to see that expanded out. I'd like to see it expanded into wider 19th century conflicts. So Crimean's all well and good, but I'd like them to do the Franco-Prussian War as well, the Second Schleswig War, things like that. And as long as they bring out Sardinians for the Crimean War, then I'm happy. I want a Sardinian army for the Crimean War. I do have all the files for a Bavarian Franco-Prussian War army as well. But anyway, we'll move on from there. So that was the idea of the Crimean War. Now, the Boer War, again, they do very, very limited figures for the Boer War, but it's an interesting topic. If they're going to do the Wild West, then I guess you could use the same rules effectively for the Boer War. It's that less standing in lines, blazing away each other with muskets, and far more of a dynamic battle. And it's something that I've said before. I think black powder is usable for the First World War, particularly 1914. And I think if you're going to use the Boer War, I think you can probably extrapolate that out for 1914 as well. So I'm quite looking forward to those supplements in theory. If the practice, I'm a little bit Now, this is why I'm a bit of a downer on this one, I'm afraid guys. That was it. That was all the mention of Napoleonics, pretty much. He spent ages waxing lyrical about the veteran Peninsular War British, Peninsular War French. If you like that kind of thing, that's great. John Stallard seems to absolutely love that. I mean, good for him. It does nothing for me, but whatever. That's fine. If that's your jam, that's your jam. If that's your only Napoleonic release for a year, though, I mean, I'm slightly underwhelmed. But anyway, I don't want to be too negative on that because it's one of those things. If you like it, that's fantastic, and they will bring a lot of individuality to either a unit or a number of units. So that's fine. Those images have been leaked. I'll try and get some up in this video because, as I say, I didn't take any useful pictures. But come the Q&A, there were two questions which I found the most interesting. The first one was asked by yours truly. I mean, I would find that most interesting. I do like the sound of my own voice. But the first one was that I asked them, is there a release date for the 1813 book? And Paul Sawyer, who is the head of the studio, he said that it has been written and it has been written, but it hasn't been edited or formatted yet. Now, I suspect, given that you do need a long lead time for these things, and printing is usually done abroad, particularly in China, so that extends the lead time even further. I would be amazed if we see it. I mean, I certainly don't think we'll see it before the end of the first quarter in 2024. So I don't think we'll see it January through March. I would be very surprised if we see it before next summer, I'm afraid. Very, 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 very surprised. Now, I mean, it's frustrating. If you're going to do a book on 1813 and it's 2023, all right, I mean, they don't really match up entirely, but, it makes more sense than to do it in 2024, doesn't it? But, there you go. So it looks like the book is not coming anytime soon. And that's a bit of a shame because they announced it last year. So if the lead-in time for a book is going to be 18 months, they've only just mentioned the Crimean War book. They've only just mentioned the Boer War book. So what we're looking there, like 2 years, 3 years for both of those books to come out. And then are they going to start work on the next Napoleonic book after that? We could be looking at 5 years for another Napoleonic book. Now, one thing that I will say is that that's not necessarily how Warlord Games work. It's not like Games Workshop where they've got the studio, they've got half a dozen writers, and they do their absolute, January we're going to work on Space Marines. February we're going to work on Tyranids. March we're going to work on Dark Eldar. It doesn't work that way for Warlord. What they seem to do is they seem to either have freelancers or they have contractors that write their books for them. I've contacted them before about the Ottoman book that I wrote. They didn't even deign to get back to me. I've spoken to people before about the War of 1812 book. They sent that in, didn't get back to them as well. So one thing John Stallard did state is that he feels they don't engage with the online community as well as they should. At least he's admitting it, so kudos to him for that. I would completely agree. I don't think they do. And I'm not just talking about myself. I've mentioned a couple of other channels, and this is where something like the Two Fat Lardies work very closely with channels such as Storm of Steel. I think they have a larger online presence in relation to the size of their company than something like Warlord Games does. Now, the other question that was asked by a chap in the Q&A was about bringing out a role-playing game. I think you talked about a role-playing game to do with Gates of Antares, I think it was, or one of their settings, and that was pretty quickly shot down because John Stallard said that the big problem with RPGs is that you don't need many figures, and we are a figure selling company, not a book publisher, which is fair enough. And the reason I find that a very interesting answer is because although they will make models for eras that they don't have books for, they do have books for eras that they don't make models for. The obvious one being Glory Hallelujah, the book for the American Civil War. Now, obviously, they're changing that, and they are going to make it into a figure line soon as well. But it does mean, I think, that the focus that they're going to be on is around models that they can sell. The idea of the book, very similar to the Codex for Games Workshop, is it's not so much the point of the book isn't to sell books. The point of the book is to help sell the figures. It's another way of enthusing people to sell the figures. And that means to me that you can look at the ranges of Warlord Games and see what they make figures for, and that's the kind of thing we can expect a book for. For instance, the Crimea they make figures for, that's what we're going to see a book for. Do they make any 1805 Prussians? Well, no, they don't. Therefore, 1806 Prussians. So therefore, do we think we're going to see 1806? Probably not. The same with 1805 Austrians. They do make 1805 Russians, but they don't make the Austrians yet. Now, there is a little bit of a spanner in the works here, a fly in the ointment, because Warlord Games have recently acquired another company. Now, those of you who are perhaps older gamers may have heard of these. They are a venerable company here in the UK, a company called Skytrex. Now, they were famous for doing very, very well-detailed metal models. You'd get something like a, say, HMS Hood, and it would have movable turrets. It'd have everything modelled on back in the day when you didn't really have that level of detail. So they were known for their quality of their casting. I've actually got a bunch of their Ottoman infantry, and those guys have taken on entire systems. So they've taken on Gates of Antares. Now they've bought another company as well called Trent Miniatures. Now these are a little less storied than Skytrex, but similar-ish. Now they make very chunky boys. They make front rank figures look like they are. I was going to say something that was going to get me very demonetized there. They make front rank look malnourished, shall we say. And they are chunky. Now, they do a really nice range of Ottomans. They also do Wolf Tone's Rebellion. And one that interests me, and I absolutely love to see a book on this, is they also do the Haitian Revolution as well. Now, next February, I am potentially toying with doing a theme month in February instead of October next year, and that'll be for reasons. But I may do that, I may not. I don't want to announce anything to do with that yet. But the idea is that John Starlard, who is the owner of Warlord, he sees them as a miniature selling company. So I think any books that I may want, for argument's sake, 1809 would be my top pick for the next book. I don't think it's going to happen because they don't make Austrians. If they start busting out the Austrians, then I might go, perhaps they will be bringing out a book soon. But it does appear that the way they schedule these things is they're bringing out books for figures that they release. Glory Hallelujah, American Civil War, Crimea being the two most obvious examples. Well, that's been a bit of a downer, so I want to put in something that's potentially a little bit of good news at the end here. And that is when the Napoleonic Spanish were released and the Prussian cavalry. I believe they were either Three Armies or Emperor's Toad miniatures. I think it might even be the same company. They were released in Warlord Resin. Now, I hear there was Warlord Resin Plus, which they brought out afterwards. Warlord Resin was not well received, I think we can say, without too much fear of disagreement. Warlord Resin Plus is apparently a much better version of that. And Paul Sawyer did say that there is no difference anymore. Warlord Resin is now Warlord Resin Plus. And obviously, it needs to filter through. But something that sells, Prussian cavalry and Spanish infantry, I can imagine sell pretty well. So they are going to roll through, and they are going to be replaced with what I assume is a better resin. I don't know. The Spanish are not great, I have to say. Paul Sawyer seemed very, very, very proud of the Warlord Resin, which... okay, I guess the guy who signs his paycheck is sat next to him. But, so he was very enthused by the fact that his miniatures that are made out of resin will bounce if you drop them on the floor. Well, my first question would be, why are you dropping them on the floor? The second question would be, I hear this a lot. People say, oh, resin models shatter when they fall on the floor. Now, I have never, ever had a resin model shatter. I've had bits break off if I've dropped it, but I've never had one shatter. So, I don't know what people are talking about there, but maybe that's just me. Maybe your experience with resin differs. So, basically, I'm just rambling now. What my takeaways from the open day weekend were that the book 1813 is not going to come anytime soon, I'm afraid to report. I don't think there's going to be any further Napoleonic books on the horizon. And I think that if they don't make models for a period, we're probably not going to see a book related to it until the models have started coming out. They don't really seem to be matching up the model releases with the books. Either the models come first, Crimea, or the book comes first. Glory, hallelujah. One last thing I would say, and this is... for Epic players, they are bringing out conversions to swap the heads for the unit. So you can have Nassau infantry, they're bringing those out. I assume they'll be bringing out the Hanoverian caps as well. Maybe even Prussian Landwehr, or do they already do Prussian Landwehr? I don't know. But so that'll be quite handy for you as well. If you want to snip off like 1,000 heads and glue these new ones on, then that's fantastic. So that's all I've got for you today. I do want to leave on one potential optimistic note, though, and that is it's a little bit like Warhammer 8th edition. When they blew up the Warhammer Old World, it was a real shame. The community fractured into a million different places, and some people dropped the game altogether. However, out of the chaos emerged groups that started putting together their own sets of rules, their own books, their own ideas. The Ninth Age, not necessarily to my taste, but certainly a very well done project. And the Warhammer Armies project makes me think that there is, with enough passion and community out there, these people, these groups can make their own books. And you know what? If we've got no 1809 book coming soon, well, let's make our own. If we've got no War of 1812 one coming, then let's make our own. Although that's already been done by someone much better than me. If we've got no Jena campaign book coming out, or Austerlitz, or Revolutionary France, or anything like that, then let's make our own books. Let's get together as a community. We don't need to rely on Warlord. We shouldn't really have been relying on Warlord. Let's get together. Let's do our own stuff. Let's make our own rules with blackjack and hookers if that's what you want. If not, then we can just have our own rules. Well, thank you very much for listening to my ramblings. I would say it was definitely worth going. I 100% will go next year. I did enjoy it. The seminars were a good, an interesting listen for some of the time. But it's definitely worth going. If you are in the UK, I would certainly go. I probably wouldn't fly from Australia to come and visit the Warlord Games Open Day, I have to say. But it was also just over the river from Games Workshop, so you can also visit Warhammer World while you're there as well. So thank you very much, and we are back to the regular schedule now. I've got next week's already in the can, ready to go, so I'm looking forward to that one. And we are back to doing live streams every Wednesday, and I'll be packing away the Knights and the Japanese and whatever else I was getting on with, and we will be going back for some more Napoleonic action. So thank you very much, and I look forward to the autumn and the winter as we get in towards the end of 2023, and I'll see all you guys next time.